I had one rule, one single, ironclad rule that I had kept for 10 straight years without ever coming close to breaking it. No women on the property. Not neighbors, not acquaintances, not old friends, not distant cousins, not anyone. The Callaway Ranch was 4,200 acres of the finest land in all of Harmon County, Texas, and not a single woman had crossed that gate in a decade. I was 34 years old. I had more money than I could spend in 3 lifetimes. I had no heirs, no interest in producing any, and I was perfectly fine with all of that. Or so I told myself every morning when I walked out onto that porch with my coffee and looked out at the fields and felt the familiar, comfortable weight of being completely, utterly alone. Then Lila Mae Pruitt showed up on a Wednesday afternoon with a flat tire and a canvas backpack with a broken strap, and the most inconvenient smile I had ever seen in my life. I had just come in from the south pasture. My boots were dusty, my shirt was damp, and I was thinking about nothing except a cold glass of water and maybe 30 minutes of silence before I had to deal with the feed invoices piling up on my desk. My ranch hand, Eddie, was the one who came up to the fence first. I saw him talking to someone by the main gate, a woman, standing just outside, pointing down at something near the front tire of a beat-up old sedan that had absolutely no business being on a dirt road in this kind of heat. I stood there for a moment, watched, told myself I would let Eddie handle it. I did not let Eddie handle it. I don't know why I walked over. To this day, I cannot give you a clean explanation. My boots carried me across that yard before my brain had the chance to vote on the matter, and by the time I reached the gate, I was close enough to see her clearly. A woman in her mid-20s, dark, honey-brown hair, pulled back in a messy braid that had mostly escaped its own tie. Wide hazel eyes, a dusting of freckles across her nose, wearing a simple blue sundress that had been washed so many times, it had gone soft and pale at the edges. Her sneakers were worn through at the left toe. She had a small smudge of motor oil on her forearm that she clearly did not know was there, and she was crouching next to that flat tire with the look of someone who had run out of options 20 minutes ago and was now calculating how far she had to walk to the next town. She looked up when she heard the gate. I'll be honest with you. When those hazel eyes landed on me, something happened in my chest that I did not appreciate in the slightest. "I'm real sorry to bother you," she said, and she had a voice that was quiet and direct at the same time, the kind that didn't waste words. "I got a flat about a quarter-mile back and pushed it here because your gate was the first sign of life I saw. I'm not trying to make trouble. I just need to borrow a phone if you have one."
Thank you.
I looked at her. I looked at Eddie, who was watching me with the specific expression of a man trying not to grin. I looked back at her. "You pushed that car a quarter-mile in this heat?" I said. She glanced back at the sedan like she was recalculating the distance. "More like a third," she admitted. "The road curves." I should have handed her a phone through the gate and sent her on her way. Well, that was the correct decision. That was the Callaway decision. Measured, efficient, no complications. I reached into my shirt pocket, took out my phone, and started to hand it through the iron bars. Then I saw that the rear left tire was not just flat. It was blown completely through, rubber folded off the rim. Her spare, which she'd propped against the back bumper, had a slow leak in it too. Even if she called someone, getting a tire out here before dark wasn't realistic. I looked at her hands. They were small and capable looking, slightly red from the heat, and she was holding them very still because she was too proud to let them shake. I opened the gate. "Pull it inside the yard," I said. "Eddie will look at it." She blinked. "Sir, I don't want to impose. It's not an imposition. It's a flat tire. Then pull it in." She pulled it in. That was the first rule I broke. I told myself it was practical. It was just a tire. It did not mean anything. I had helped strangers before, and it had never cost me a thing. I turned around and walked back toward the house without looking back, and that was that. Except it wasn't that, because Eddie came in 20 minutes later with the news that the axle on her car was cracked, and there was no fixing it same day. Not out here. Not on a Wednesday evening when the only mechanic in Harmon County had already closed up for the day. I stood in my kitchen and processed this information. Where was she headed? I asked. Millfield, Eddie said. Got a job starting Monday at the diner there. Says she's driving from Beaumont. Millfield was 45 minutes away. She had no car. I'd no money for a motel. I hadn't asked, but I could read a situation. And the temperature outside was not dropping fast enough to make walking any kind of reasonable option. I stood at the kitchen window and looked out at the yard, where she was sitting on the hood of her broken car, backpack between her feet, looking at something on the horizon with an expression that was calm in the way that people are calm when they are quietly working very hard not to fall apart. If you think I'm about to tell you I let her sleep in a ditch, you don't know me well enough yet. But if you think I was happy about what came next, you don't know me well enough either. I opened the back door. There's a guest room, I called out. It has a lock on it. You're welcome to it, until the mechanic opens tomorrow. She turned and looked at me from across the yard. She had that direct, measuring quality in her gaze that I was starting to recognize. The kind that meant she was assessing you fairly, without flattery and without suspicion, just honestly. I'll earn it, she said. I almost laughed. I hadn't laughed in a long time. There's nothing to earn, I said. There's always something to earn, she said, and picked up her backpack and walked toward the house. Her name was Lila Mae Pruitt, and she was 26 years old, from a small town outside Beaumont. And she cooked the most unfairly good scrambled eggs I had ever tasted in my entire life. I found this out the next morning because I came downstairs at 6 a.m., expecting an empty kitchen, and found her already at the stove with a dish towel over her shoulder, scrambled eggs in the pan, biscuits in the oven, and a full pot of coffee ready. She was barefoot. Her hair was down. She was humming something quiet under her breath that I didn't recognize. And the whole kitchen smelled like something a kitchen in this house hadn't smelled like in a very long time. If you're enjoying this story, I'd love for you to subscribe to the channel. Hit that button and drop a comment telling me, what would you have done if you found a stranger cooking breakfast in your kitchen? I'll leave a little heart on every comment I see. I stood in the doorway for a moment that was probably longer than necessary. She heard me and turned around. I found the eggs and biscuit mix, she said, without a trace of apology in it. Hope that's okay. I told you I'd earn it. You didn't have to. I know I didn't have to. She turned back to the eggs and moved them in the pan with the kind of easy confidence that meant she had cooked 10,000 breakfasts before this one. Sit down. I reckon nobody had told me to sit down in my own kitchen in approximately 10 years. I sat down. The eggs were extraordinary. I don't know what she did to them. I ate 2 full plates and did not say a word. And she sat across from me with her own plate and a coffee mug and looked out the window at the fields like she had been eating breakfast at this table her whole life. It was profoundly unsettling. I found I did not want it to stop. The mechanic confirmed what Eddie had suspected. Then the axle was cracked clean through, and the parts would take 4 days to come in from San Antonio. 4 days. I delivered this information to Lila, who was sitting on the porch steps at the time, and watched her process it with that same quiet steadiness she seemed to carry everywhere. I'll find somewhere else, she said immediately. There's nowhere else, I said. There's one motel in Harmon County, and it's been closed since '94. You can stay here. She looked up at me. Mr. Calloway. Wade! She paused. Wade. Hearing her say my name did something I was not prepared for. I can't stay here for 4 days without pulling my weight. I'll work for it." "You don't have to work for—" "I do," she said, firmly, in that tone that told me the conversation was over. "What needs doing?" I looked around the yard. Eddie was over by the barn. The house needed cleaning that I'd been putting off for 3 weeks. The kitchen garden my mother had planted years ago was completely overgrown, and I'd been meaning to clear it since spring. I told myself it was practical. She needed to feel useful. I was just accommodating a guest. "The garden," I said. "Out back." She looked at it. It was a disaster. 800 square feet of absolute chaos, weeds taller than she was, tool shed full of equipment that hadn't been touched in 2 years. She looked at it for a long moment. "Done," she said, and went to find the gloves. Those 4 days should not have been what they were. I want to be clear about that. I want you to understand that I had every intention of maintaining a polite, distant, landlord and guest arrangement that would end cleanly when her car was fixed, and she drove off to Millfield. I was a disciplined man. I had kept that same discipline for a decade. 4 days was nothing. I was in the south field on the afternoon of the first day when I saw smoke coming from the direction of the kitchen garden and thought, for a genuinely alarming moment, that she had started a fire. I drove back in the truck at speed, jumped the fence, and came around the side of the house to find her burning a pile of pulled weeds in the metal drum we used for yard debris, perfectly controlled, with a hose in one hand and a completely calm expression on her face. She looked at me. She looked at the fence I had just jumped. She looked at my truck parked at an angle that strongly suggested I had stopped in a hurry. "I wasn't going to burn the house down," she said. "I know that," I said. "Do you?" There was a small, quiet smile at the edge of her mouth that I refused to acknowledge. "I was checking on the chickens," I said. "They don't like smoke." She looked at the chickens, who were 30 yards away and completely undisturbed. "Right," she said, and went back to her fire. I stood there for another 3 seconds doing absolutely nothing useful, then turned around and went back to the south field. On the second day, I came in from the barn at noon to find she had reorganized my entire kitchen pantry, while the soup she'd made from scratch was simmering on the stove. I had been looking for the same box of cornmeal for 6 months. She had found it and placed it at eye level with a piece of masking tape that said, "Cornmeal," in neat print, like I was someone who needed reminding. I stood in the pantry doorway reading that label for a longer time than was dignified. "You didn't have to do the pantry," I said from the doorway. "It needed doing," she said from behind me, appearing suddenly with a wooden spoon in one hand. I turned around. She was close. She smelled like wood smoke and something floral that I couldn't identify, and the soup was making the whole house warm. "There's soup," she said. "I can smell it," I said. "Do you want some?" The correct answer was no. The correct answer was that I had work to do, and I would eat later, and I would maintain a polite and reasonable distance for 2 more days until her car was fixed. The correct answer was a lot of things. "Yes," I said. We ate on the back porch because the day was too clear to eat inside. And she talked about Beaumont and the diner in Millfield and a grandmother in Lufkin who had raised her and taught her to cook. And she asked me about the ranch, the way people do when they're genuinely curious and not just filling silence. She asked how long my family had owned it. She asked about the horses. She asked about the fields, what they grew, how the land worked. And she listened to my answers like they actually mattered, which was a thing I had not experienced from another person in longer than I cared to admit. She did not ask about the rule. She did not ask why I lived alone on 4,200 acres. She did not ask about heirs or plans or the future, the way everyone in the county always did when they got within talking distance of me. She just asked about the land. I found I was telling her about it in more detail than I had told anyone, ever. The third day was when things got complicated. I was coming in from the north fence line in the late afternoon, that golden hour when the Texas fields go amber and the shadows stretch long and everything looks like it might have been painted. And I heard her laughing. Real laughing. Unguarded. A little loud. The kind of laugh you don't perform. I came around the corner of the barn and found her in the corral with my oldest horse, Ranger, a 20-year-old quarter horse who had decided approximately 15 years ago that he did not like people and was not interested in revising that position. He was standing beside her with his nose against her shoulder while she laughed at something he had apparently done and feeding him what appeared to be a carrot she'd found somewhere, and he was letting her. Ranger did not let people. I stood at the fence and watched this for a minute that I lost track of. Ranger, who had once bitten my foreman on the shoulder for looking at him wrong. Ranger, who stood beside this woman like she was the most natural thing in his pasture. She was talking to him. Not baby talk, just talking. Quietly. The way she talked to everything. Direct and unhurried. She saw me at the fence and didn't startle. "He came up to me," she said, as if I might not believe her. I wasn't bothering him. "I know," I said. "He doesn't let people." She looked at Ranger. "He seems fine to me." "He bit my foreman?" She turned and looked at Ranger with great seriousness, like she was reconsidering him. Ranger pushed his nose against her shoulder again. She laughed again. That sound went somewhere in my chest and stayed there. "He's fine," she said, with absolute confidence. I stood at that fence for another few minutes, pretending I was checking something on the latch. Then I went inside. That night, I sat on the front porch later than usual. The fields were dark, and the sky was the particular black of rural Texas, stars going all the way to the ground at the horizon. And I thought about 10 years. I thought about the rule I had built, and why I had built it, and what it had cost me, and what it had saved me. And I thought about scrambled eggs, and a woman talking to a horse that didn't like people, and a pantry that finally made sense. I wasn't sleeping well, I'll tell you that plainly. Knowing she was in that guest room, I'd just down the hall, knowing there was another person in this house after 10 years of silence. I lay awake and listened to the house settle around me and thought about rules and what they were actually for. The fourth day came and the mechanic called to say the parts were in and the car would be ready by 3 o'clock. She was in the garden when I found her to tell her. She'd cleared almost all of it. You could see the structure of it now. The raised beds my mother had built, the stone path between them. All of it clean and viable and alive again, in a way it hadn't been in years. She was on her knees in the far corner, planting something from a small plastic pot she'd apparently gotten from somewhere. "What is that?" I asked. "Rosemary," she said. Found it at the hardware store in town yesterday, when Eddie drove me in for supplies. Your mom planted rosemary here. You can still see the old roots. Figured I'd put it back." I stood very still. I had not told her that. I had not told her my mother had planned this garden, had grown this rosemary, had spent her Saturday mornings here the same way this woman had spent the last 4 days. I had not said a word about any of that. She had looked at the garden and simply read it. The way she read everything, quiet and perceptive, and without making a production of it. "The car's ready," I said after a moment. She sat back on her heels and looked at the rosemary. "Good," she said. She didn't look at me. "You don't have to be in Millfield until Monday," I said. It was Thursday. I was not sure why I was telling her the day, and she presumably knew the day. "That's true," she said. There was a pause that had a question in it. "The back porch boards need renailing," I said. "Eddie keeps saying he'll get to it." She finally looked up at me, those hazel eyes, direct and calm in the afternoon light. I don't know how to nail porch boards, she said. I do, I said. She looked at me for a moment, and then the corner of her mouth went up in that small, quiet smile that I'd been trying not to think about for 4 days. Then I reckon you don't need me for that, she said. I might need someone to hand me nails, I said. The smile got slightly less small. That's very specialized work, she said. Takes years of training, I said. She looked at the rosemary again. Then she picked up her trowel and pressed the soil carefully around the base of the plant. I guess I can stay until Sunday, she said, like it was a minor concession she was making for my benefit. I guess you can, I said, like it wasn't the best news I'd heard in 10 years. She stayed until Sunday. And then Sunday came, and I stood on that porch, the porch with the newly nailed boards, watching Eddie put her bag in the truck that would drive her to Millfield. And something happened in my chest that I recognized this time. That was the problem. I recognized it completely. Hey, I called after her. She turned around, one foot already on the running board. Millfield's 45 minutes away, I said. I know how far it is, she said. That's not far, I said. She looked at me for a long moment. The Texas morning was clear and still, and everything smelled like rosemary and dust, and something about the day felt like a question. No, she said finally. It's not far at all. And then she smiled, not the small, quiet one, the real one, the one I hadn't seen until that moment, full and easy and unguarded. And I felt it knock the air clean out of me. Before I knew what I was doing, I said, I'll come see you Thursday. I had never said anything like that to anyone in 10 years. She raised an eyebrow. Will you? If that's all right. She tilted her head, studying me the same way she'd studied Ranger that day in the corral, fair and direct. I'm at the diner from 6 to 2, she said. After 2, I'm free. After 2, I said. She got in the truck. I stood on that porch until the truck was out of sight. And then I stood there a while longer. And then I went inside and sat down in the kitchen and looked at the pantry with the masking tape labels and the pot of rosemary she'd placed on the windowsill before she left. And I thought about 10 years of silence and about how profoundly, completely wrong I had been about what I actually wanted. Thursday, I was in Millfield by 2:15. I am not a man who is early for things. I was early. The diner was called May's, which made me think for half a second that she'd made it up. But no, it had been May's since 1987. It was just the kind of coincidence that felt like it meant something. She was coming out the back when I pulled up, still in her work clothes, hair back in that loose braid, and she saw the truck and stopped for a moment. I could tell she hadn't been entirely sure I'd come. That bothered me, the idea that she hadn't been sure. You actually came, she said. I said I would, I said. People say things, she said. I don't, I said. She looked at me for a moment, and then nodded once, like she'd filed that away. There's a good spot down by the creek, she said. You want to walk? We walked for an hour and a half and talked about nothing and everything. Her grandmother, my father, the ranch, the diner, what she wanted, what I'd stopped wanting, and then started wanting again, and couldn't quite name yet. She threw a flat rock and skipped it 4 times across the water, and then looked at me like she was waiting to see if I was impressed. I was impressed. I didn't say so. She knew anyway. On the walk back, she said without preamble, Why haven't you had anyone at the ranch in 10 years? Because it was easier, I said. Easier than what? Than the alternative. She didn't push it. She had this quality. She'd ask a thing directly, and then let you answer on your own timeline, without circling back or prodding. I found myself answering anyway. I had a situation when I was 24, I said. Woman I thought I knew. Turned out she was more interested in the ranch than she was in me. When that became clear, I closed the whole matter up and didn't revisit it. "That's a long time to be closed up," she said. "It didn't feel long," I said. "Until recently." She glanced at me sideways. "Recently, like the last 4 days?" "Something like that," I said. She stopped walking. We were on the bridge over the creek, and she put her hands on the railing and looked at the water. "I'm not interested in your ranch," she said. "I know that," I said. "No, I just want you to know I know what you have and I don't want it." She said it quietly, without drama. I like talking to you. That's all." Something in me that had been held tight for a long time came slightly loose. "I like talking to you too," I said. She smiled at the water. "Good," she said. "Then come back Saturday." I came back Saturday, and the Saturday after that. By the third Saturday, the guys at the diner knew my truck by sound, and Eddie had started leaving me knowing looks I chose not to engage with. By the fourth Thursday, I had driven to Millfield 4 times, and she had driven to the ranch twice, and I had stood on the porch, watching her sit on the fence talking to Ranger, like she'd been doing it her whole life, and I was so far gone, I couldn't have found my way back to the Rule with a map and a compass, and she had no idea the ranch was worth what it was worth. She never asked. She asked about the horses by name. She asked about the land and how it worked. And she listened like my answers mattered, which was something I hadn't experienced from another person in longer than I could say. One October evening, a storm came in off the plains, and she sat beside me on the porch swing with her feet tucked under her and a mug of coffee. And she said, very quietly, "This is the most beautiful place I've ever been." I looked at her, not the fields. I reckon she knew I was looking at her. She didn't say anything. She just leaned her head back against the swing and watched the lightning and let me look. And I thought, I've been a fool for 10 years. A very efficient, very disciplined, very lonely fool. Before too much longer comes. And I want to say, if this story is hitting you in the chest a little, subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments. Have you ever met someone who just walked into your life without warning and reorganized everything? I'll leave a heart on everyone. I told her I wanted her to come to the ranch and stay. Not as a guest, not temporarily. I told her this on a Sunday afternoon in November at the kitchen table, plainly, because I had run out of ways to be indirect about it. She looked at her mug for a moment. "Wade," she said. "I know what I'm saying," I said. "Do you? Because that's a big thing." "I know that." "I've got a job in Millfield." "I know that too." "You've been alone for 10 years." "I'm aware." "And you haven't wanted anyone here in all that time." "No," I said. "So I haven't." I looked at her across the table. This woman who had pushed a broken car up a dirt road in the Texas heat and made breakfast without being asked and planted rosemary in my mother's garden without knowing that's what it was. "But I've been craving you every night since you drove out of this yard in September, and I'm not interested in being disciplined about it anymore." She stared at me. For a woman usually very difficult to startle, she looked startled. "You've been craving me," she repeated. "Every night," I said. "Wade, that might be the most honest thing a man has ever said to me." "I'm a direct person," I said. "You really are." She set down her mug. "I'd need to give 2 weeks' notice at the diner." Something in my chest expanded about 3 sizes. "That's reasonable," I said. And I'm not moving into the main house right away. I'll need my own space while we figure out what this is." "There's the foreman's cabin. Empty, clean, its own porch." She looked at me. "Its own porch?" "And a view of the east pasture," I said. She almost smiled. "You planned this." "I've been thinking about it since October," I said. She laughed. The real one. Full and easy and unguarded. "You impossible man," she said. It was a yes. She moved into the foreman's cabin on a Friday in late November, with a truck more full of plants than anything else, which told you everything about Lila Mae Pruitt. Eddie helped carry things in and tried hard to conceal the fact that he was emotional about it, which he failed completely. Ranger heard the truck and came to the fence without being called and stood there until she went over. Or scratched his nose, talked to him for 5 minutes, then went back to unloading like it was the most natural reunion in the world. I stood on the porch and watched all of it, and felt something I didn't have a clean word for. Contentment was too small. Relief was accurate, but incomplete. It felt like a house settling after a long time of leaning, finding its level again, becoming what it was always meant to be. She looked up from Ranger's fence and saw me. She raised a hand. I raised mine back. I went inside and started a pot of coffee because she'd be done with Ranger in about 20 minutes, and I knew how she took hers. That seemed like the right way to start whatever was coming next. I had no air. I had no plan. I had spent 10 years building walls so solid I had convinced myself I didn't need anything on the other side of them. And then a woman with a broken car and a canvas backpack and a braid losing its battle with the Texas wind had walked through my gate, and I had opened it. Best thing I ever did. There are things I think about now that I never did before. Whether the east cabin porch is comfortable enough, whether the coffee's ready when she's up, whether Ranger's getting enough attention, because somehow his well-being became partially her department, and he is thriving in a way that is almost offensive. The rosemary in the garden, coming up fuller than it's been in years. She ruined me in the best possible way. Every wall, every rule, every carefully maintained inch of distance, gone. And I spend a lot of time now thinking about how I had all that silence and thought it was peace, but it was just the absence of her. A long, like quiet wait I didn't know I was in until it was over. If this story hit you somewhere in the chest, subscribe to the channel and leave me a comment. Tell me, have you ever had a rule that turned out to be keeping the best thing out? I'll leave a heart on everyone. 4,200 acres in Harmon County, Texas. A house that finally sounds like one. A woman who talks to my horse like an old friend, plants rosemary in my mother's garden, and makes scrambled eggs like she invented the concept. And me, a man who avoided the whole world for 10 years, craving her every night and not apologizing for a single second of it. I don't do regrets, never have. The rule is gone, the ranch is full, the rosemary is growing, and I am exactly where I'm supposed to be.